Welcome. This is the Scarlet and Rage podcast. I am Michael, the voice of reason. This is my co-host, Jay, the voice of rage. And we appreciate you guys taking time to watch and tune in on this Tuesday evening. I know we've been a little bit hit and miss on the off season. Sometimes we've been on Mondays. Sometimes we've been on Tuesdays. I think another time we were even on a Thursday. So we appreciate you bearing with us. We will be getting back on a schedule, hopefully very soon. And certainly the season will, kind of have its own schedule, probably 2 episodes per week. And so we're glad to be coming to you this week. And Jay, I know that, we don't want to give a whole lot away, but, there is something that I would like to mention. I know you were kind of in disagreement on this. You're like, nope, we need to hold it in the bag. But I can't help it. I think I'm going to let it out. I'm going to tell just a little bit about it tonight. We had mentioned some time back that we were potentially going to be doing a board that you could post on, a message board. And we had we've taken some big steps in that, and I'm excited, and it looks good. And we're, kind of trying to work some things out and make sure it's good to go. But Jay, give us just a little bit about your excitement, because you are the father of the Scarlet and Rage board. This is your idea. This was, you mentioned it, and then you just kind of made it happen. So just mention it briefly here before we get into the episode.
Freedom of speech. First thing that comes to mind is freedom of speech. I'm getting sick of the socialism, the communism on boards like Buckeye Scoop, Buck Nuts, Yappy Sports, any kind of sports forum, Detroit Pistons, Cincinnati Reds. Michael, I have been banned forever from the old the Red Zone message board, if you know what that is, for the Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah.
I have been banned like 2 or 3 times, and each time has been permanent. And I'm not really saying anything all that bad. I mean, it's a franchise that hasn't won a playoff series since 1995. There really isn't a lot of positivity to go around, and they don't like what I have to say. So this message board is designed to give people the speech to say whatever they want, as long as you're not posting like physical addresses threatening to murder somebody. Like, you're fair game, man. You post whatever you want. The unfiltered, unfiltered voice.
Yeah, there's going to be two boards or 2 sections, I guess, 2 forums, so to speak. The kind of the more Buckeye or the football.
No. There's going to be 5.
Going to be 5. Okay. Well, right now there's 2, the Buckeye board and the political board. So we're looking forward to bringing that to you. I think that it's a free place to go and talk, express your thoughts, talk about the Buckeyes, talk about other things that are going to be available there to discuss. And we will keep you posted as we get closer to launching it. Jay?
Michael,
go ahead.
Did you know that today, this episode right now, is our 100th episode?
I didn't know that until you said that just,
literally,
when we were about to go live.
On.
Yeah.
Dude,
that's amazing.
Isn't that crazy? Like, I saw it right before we got on. I noticed, I was like, oh, wait a minute. It says we have 99 videos. So that means this is our 100th video, man. Crazy. Yeah. Look at where we're at, man.
I know it. And this is way too late to be saying this, but like and subscribe if you would. We're going to get into the show here real quickly, I promise. But like and subscribe. Many of you are watching and have not subscribed. And we want to get to that 1,000 mark so that we can be monetized. Because, Jay, when I go to the hours of this show that have been watched, it's been watched thousands and thousands of hours. And so we've got way more than enough hours to get monetized. We just need those 1,000 subs. And so we'd appreciate it if you would.
Absolutely. And understand that more X content is going to come out here shortly. We just met with our producer. He's going to be distributing more X content. So definitely give us a follow and, I guess not a like, but a follow on X. And a lot more content is going to be coming out there. One thing I actually wanted to talk about, side topic, Michael, before we get into, what the hell is going on. You said yesterday you took your son all the way up to Dayton for a tryout for next season. Is that what I got from that? Is that correct?
You are correct in that. Yeah.
And this is for next season. This isn't for like a month away. This is for next season.
It's for next season. I told you, kids sports is nuts. Anybody watching who's got kids in sports, it. It's the way it is. And so my older son has always been football first, baseball second. He's turning into a really good baseball player. And so he really needed to get on a better team. I hadn't prioritized him really being on a top type of team. My younger son is the opposite. He's a baseball first, football second. And so he's played on one of the, really the best team in the area. And, my older son wanted to go try out for it. And so I gave him a chance. There was about 150 kids total that were trying out. And he got one of the spots. So I think he is going to be playing for that team next year.
Boy, oh boy. I was thinking about that, man, and how much like little free time like you have because of all of that. And I have 2 boys, so they're going to be playing. They're probably going to be playing sports. Like they can do whatever they want. But if they choose to play sports, man, I'm not going to be driving them around like Timbuktu, like backwards and forwards all over like Charlotte or wherever. Like I'm just not going to do that, man. They can play whatever sport they want, but I mean. I'm not going to be freaking driving them and just completely like my weekends are gone. Like, screw that, man.
Yeah.
Heck no, I'm not doing it.
Well, then they'll have to pick a sport they're serious about and a sport they just want to have fun with, to kind of try to keep the time limited. And what we've done to limit the time further is I don't let either of my 2 play basketball. They're not going to play basketball in college. They're not going to obviously play basketball beyond college. And so there's no point in spending the time and the effort for that. So my toughest season's the spring. Once baseball's over and it's football and then the off season, everything gets pretty good for a while. But the spring is not enjoyable running all different directions with both these guys playing, sports. But Jay, it's a blessing.
Really
so I don't want to only complain about it. It's a blessing.
This is a legitimate question because my wife has a friend. Now, this friend of hers knows nothing about sports, so I take what she says with a grain of salt, but she actually may have some knowledge on this. She says in Nebraska, her kids have got to play travel baseball for a AAU or travel team that is not affiliated with the high school at all to actually be able to make the high school team. Is there truth to that?
Well, that's not like standard practice across the country necessarily in high school baseball, but you will have very few to none of the kids across the board in high schools across America that make the high school team, especially when you're talking about the top couple of divisions in states. You'll have very few kids that will make the team, very few, if any, that are not playing travel ball, at least by the age of probably 10 or 11. That's at the latest.
It's because of the development, right?
Well, it's not even that, because you can get very bad development with some of this travel ball. But the issue is there's nowhere left to play, because all of the, what used to be at the local ballparks, all of the all-stars left long ago. Then some of the middle of the road players started forming their own teams. Now this travel ball has different divisions. So you've got open divisions, you've got AAA, you've got gold, silver. And so there's a place for almost everybody. And there's very few people besides kids that are really, really uncommitted to the sport that are playing like just at a local park level. And so if that's all you play against, you're playing against very, very lower tier players, and it's going to be difficult to get as good as you need to be.
I guess it just depends on what high school you attend.
Yeah, and it depends a little bit on what kind of player you are. I mean, if you're a guy that's just got a 90-mile-an-hour arm, then the high school is going to take you, and they're going to put you on the mound. But, if you're a position player that has fallen behind, it could be tough on you. So, yeah, it's almost a necessity if you're going to play baseball, and that's a shame, because it shouldn't be the way that it is. It's just
I see. Okay, so she was wrong. This person was wrong. Maybe my wife misunderstood her. I don't know. But it does sound like you don't have to do this to make the high school team.
Not typically, no. But I mean, I've never heard of that, but you also kind of have to do it to make the high school team.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, so let's move on, Michael. We have a lot to discuss tonight because let's be real. This has been our first football-centric episode in a while. We're not somebody who's gonna create news out of nothing because that's just not what we do here. But Michael, we have got some serious problems right now, my friend. Um, Let me just say, I've never seen collective, and when I mean problems, I'm talking recruiting. I posted on our YouTube page, and probably I should have done it on X, which we're going to start having more of an X presence, by the way.
Yeah.
But in regards to recruiting, Michael, I've never seen collectively in one class both sides of the ball, the lines recruited this poorly at Ohio State. To be honest, I just think Larry Johnson, he needs to be gone. I've said that probably for a while. And Tyler Bowen, man, like, I'm not saying he needs to be gone, but I don't think he should have been here in the first place. He's been very, very underwhelming. I mean, I would like to start on the defensive side first, but, brief preview of your thoughts on that, man, of the two coaches. I mean, what do you think? Don't get into the NIL stuff yet. Just, brief overall thoughts on that, just the coaches themselves.
Well, I'll say this. I personally am not as down as you are on the offensive line, and Bowen. I know that, this class hasn't told us anything. It hasn't told us if there's going to be an increase in offensive line recruiting, if there's going to be an uptick in that, because the kind of the higher rated players that he has gotten have been out of the state of Ohio. And those kids were, likely going to sign with whoever was the coach. And that's Maxwell Riley, who is a composite 94. And I won't go through all of them, and then we've got another Ohio kid who is a pretty highly ranked 4-star. And so I'm not going to totally punish him because he was able to get good talent in Ohio. I mean, it's great when we have talent that's Ohio State level in Ohio. That makes it even better. I wish we had more of it. So I'm not going to necessarily ding him too bad for that, but it would have been nice to see him land an equivalent of one of those somewhere outside of the state of Ohio as well. And he hasn't done that. We do have a lower ranked guy that would be kind of a developmental type. So that's my thoughts on the O-line. On the D-line, I think that Larry needs to go. His time is over. He's had recruiting struggles for several cycles in a row now. He has avoided disaster by the skin of his teeth in a couple of those cycles. And, I don't know if it's his age and he's being recruited against that way, or if he's just lost touch. Of course, we're going to talk about NIL, but this is something that Larry has had for the last several years, regardless of what the state of NIL has been. And I just think it's time for Larry to go.
Understood. I'm just going to get right into the defensive side of the ball first. The defensive line first. So, as everyone knows, yesterday, Landon Barnes, defensive end from Duncanville, Texas. He went to Duncanville High School. He actually is teammates with KJ Ford, who Ohio State is also in on. He just committed to Ole Miss. Yes, like I said yesterday, mind you, Michael, this guy was actually a Plan B recruit because, as everyone also knows, Carter Meadows from Gonzaga High School out there in D.C., who Ohio State was highly in on, and all of the homers, Michael, kept saying like, oh, Carter Meadows is going to be a Buckeye. Carter Meadows is going to be a Buckeye. Well, guess who he went to? He went to our beloved Michigan Wolverines, which, you know what, at least he's staying in the Big Ten. And then what ended up happening was about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago now, actually before our last episode, this all occurred. Again, this is before like the nuclear meltdown occurred. So I kind of let it slide to see if anything would more change to the negative or positive. And it has definitely slid in the negative direction because Luke Wafel out of the Hun High School in Princeton, New Jersey, he ended up staying with USC and committing to the USC Trojans after a late surge by Ohio State that the Trojans ended up weathering. So he visited USC. USC shot to the very top. I believe they got the last official visit with him. His brother actually plays at Penn State, but USC was in the lead because they got the last official visit. They probably, paid him a lot of money. This was absolutely NIL, but strangely enough, you don't see Ohio State struggling with these types of recruitments at the quarterback and wide receiver position. And for Ohio State to even get back into it means Ohio State was trying to play that NIL game at the end and they just fell up short. But, again, they just need better coaches and recruiters at the defensive line position, Michael. Ohio State, we won a title this past season, the 2024-2025 season. Again, that's now last season, Michael. This is a new season now. We can't, we just can't rest our hats on that title anymore. That team won a title, Michael, on the backs of the elite 2021 defensive line class, and defensive line recruiting since then has been below average for Ohio State standards. Even with Sincere Johnson, the Glenville linebacker who just committed to Ohio State like a week and a half ago, that only has given Michael, 3 composite top 100 players. Mm-hmm. And that is just flat out not getting it done. That is an embarrassment if you're Ohio State. 3 composite top 100 players, that's it. And we're sitting here in the beginning of July, and that's all we got. I don't see any big names we're in on outside of the safety from Mississippi, Braylon Womack. So again, and to add on before I'm just going to go all in here. The USC 247 board, by the way, is openly ripping on Bill Karelic, Dan Rubin, Mark Porter for accusing them of buying their recruits, by the way. And I personally would not lump in Mark Porter with the other two, by the way, but they are not wrong. Bill Karelic and Dan Rubin are the scummiest of scum when it comes to covering Ohio State. Larry Johnson has just been bad since 2021. He's had only 1 composite 5-star recruit since 2022, and that is a fireable offense. By the way, that was oh man, who the heck? His name is ringing. I'm missing it. Edric Houston, 2024 Buford High School. He is the only composite 5-star we have gotten since that epic 2021 class, and that is a failure in so many ways, Michael. How in the fuck can we put up with this fucking bitch assness every single fucking year in the recruiting cycle? I can't fucking deal with this anymore, man. Ryan, get your fucking head on straight, buddy. You had me in like such a good mood winning a title, and now this is starting to piss me the fuck off. Michael, what else to add about the defensive side of the ball, man?
Well, what I am really wanting to talk about. So, I mean, if you're not ready to move on to that, then my thoughts are limited on the defensive side.
Okay, well then do you want me to just go in and talk about the offensive line too?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Offensive line recruiting is in a really bad place, Michael. Mm-hmm. When people are excited for a 3-star from Arizona, and I'm talking about that Aaron Thomas, a 3-star from Arizona. We're not even talking about a 3-star from Florida or Georgia or California, Arizona. Some people are trying to say Aaron Thomas is not the typical 3-star, this, that, and the other. Well, Texas A&M was his second. I guess they finished second. But Michael, what the fuck has Texas A&M done as of late? Lose to USC in the Las Vegas Bowl? Ohio State shouldn't be going down to the wire versus Texas A&M in a recruiting battle ever. Yeah. However, they should be having these battles against the big-time teams and winning the big-time kids.
Well, the only thing Texas A&M has done is that they have consistently had very highly rated classes. So I guess maybe that's a positive that they were going after. I don't know. They certainly haven't been good on the football field. And when you look at his offer list, Ohio State, Texas A&M, Florida, Washington, that would have been an amazing offer list in 1998 or 1999. But in 2025, Texas A&M's not good. Florida State's not good. Washington, they've been relatively good, but it's not like they get highly ranked guys. They get lower tier guys and develop them over 3 and 4 and 5 years. That's how they get their good offensive lines. So, I hope he's not an average 3-star. I hope he's more than that. But, just looking on paper, it is what it is. He's a developmental guy. We'll see in about 3 years if he was, something that ended up panning out or not. But you're right. I do think that we could have finished a little stronger on the offensive line. We do have a couple of highly rated guys out of Ohio, 94 and 95 composites. And so,
my thoughts on that, man. My thoughts on that.
Well, I know, but I'm saying, if we had a 94 out of Georgia and a 94 out of Indiana and, this other guy, then we might be looking at the class a little bit differently. But the truth is, just because the talent is in state, hey, that's a good thing. It's easier to get. So, we need more of that. But that being said, I do think we should be greedy. We got 2 talented guys in state. I think we should have been able to go out and get a fairly comparable guy out of state, somebody at least, 91, 92, 93, a moderately highly rated, 4-star. We certainly have not been getting those 5-star guys on the offensive line. And I think it's, I agree with what James says. I know you kind of disagree, Jay. But OSU refuses to pay for the lines what other teams are. And this problem of them not paying for the lines isn't just with this new NIL iteration and this new rule change that's taking place. It goes back. They weren't paying for those guys out of high school for a while. And that's why they haven't recruited great on the offensive line outside of the 2021 class, as you said, which, kind of led this team. And they're continuing to not do so. They would go and pay big out of the portal now and then. They paid about $1 million for Simmons, to come back. When he came back, they paid a pretty good amount for Seth McLaughlin from Alabama. So they were paying for some of these guys out of the portal to supplement. And maybe that's Ryan Day's philosophy now. Maybe he believes he's going to get guys out of high school that he would rather have a little lower rated class and a little lower rated player. And then he's going to aggressively attack the portal and try and get some proven commodities and spend some money there when it's more of a sure thing. I don't know. We'll see. But right now, the high school recruiting is a bit of a struggle for the Buckeyes on both sides of the line.
Well, to your point about the Ohio kids, and if people don't know what I meant by, Michael knows my thoughts. I don't consider it a win in recruiting to get Ohio offensive linemen, no matter how good they are. It takes no sales skill. As long as you are like a warm, living body on the Ohio State coaching staff, you're going to get kids in Ohio on the offensive line. It's just a matter of fact. I mean, yeah, you have some like outliers like Jackson Carmen, who actually wasn't from Ohio. He just happened to move to Ohio when he was in 8th grade and then went to school there. He was actually from South Carolina, and that's why he went to Clemson. So he actually grew up a Clemson fan in that regards. It's strange for kids to, go south to north, but it does happen every now and then. But, again, some people are trying to say stars don't matter. And I see some comments here, and I was actually about to get to that. And they're trying to say offensive line is a crapshoot. I couldn't disagree more, Michael, because once again, and it's not you, but the Ohio State fan base will make claims like this, to find a scapegoat for the bad recruiting by Ohio State. Same thing with NIL. It's just weak sauce rather than, holding the actual coach accountable for poor recruiting. Because, for example, a quick search. I did a quick search the other day, Michael, of the offensive line classes between the years of 2019 to 2022. And guess what?
What?
Damn near all of the offensive tackles that were composite 5-star recruits were taken in the first round. Mm-hmm. If anything, offensive line evaluations are pretty on point at the high school level. Yes, of course, you are going to have your outliers, as with anything, but the 5 stars are legit on the line, and the composite is not missing at that position. The hit rate for 5 stars being first rounders is exponentially higher than the hit rate for 3 stars. I know the draft, you have lower rated guys, that are getting drafted in the first round. But, I think they said in the last 2 drafts, 7 out of the 16 first round picks that were 3-star or lower were guys that are on the offensive line. Considering that there are over 200 linemen rated 3 stars or lower every class, that's actually pretty horrific numbers, Michael. What are there every year for 5-star offensive linemen? 7 at most? That there's just zero comparison there. There is just zero fucking comparison there. And my original thought stands to date in that 5 stars matter. 5 stars absolutely fucking matter, Michael.
Well, I don't disagree, because I think that it's a numbers game. And, like you said, a high proportion. No, there's a lot of 5-star offensive tackles that don't pan out or are not that good. I mean, certainly that we see that all the time. But, percentage wise, a higher percentage of them are panning out to be first and second round talent than a percentage of 4 stars or 5 stars. I mean, 4 stars or 3 stars. And so you will see some of those 3 stars rise and become first and second round picks, but it's a very low percentage of the overall number of 3 stars out there. It's a fractional percentage, whereas a pretty high percent of the 5 stars are having that level of success and going on to the NFL. So it's a numbers game. The more of those 5 stars you're getting, your odds are increasing with every one that you're going to end up having a round 1 through 3 type NFL talent, maybe even round 1 or 2. And you look at Ohio State's offensive line this past year. Who was the 5-star, Jay? Donovan Jackson. What round did Jackson go in? Did he go in the second?
I believe he went in the second.
Yeah. So there you go. He's a 5-star kid. He ends up being a second round talent. So not far off where he was rated out of high school. A 5-star, meaning you're likely a first round type talent. So especially being a guard like he was, he essentially lived up to his billing, because it's hard to get taken in the first round as a guard, no matter how good you are. Possible.
That's a lie. Donovan Jackson went in the first round.
There we go then. Okay. So he absolutely lived up to his billing as a first round talent and a 5-star guy. And so if we were getting 2 or 3 of those 5-star guys every 3 or 4 years, we would be seeing probably 1 or 2 of those guys being those first or second round type of talents every few years. And that makes a difference. It definitely makes a difference, Jay. And so I'm not going to say that it doesn't, but I also will say offensive lines can be built a lot of different ways. And you can have very, very good offensive lines that don't necessarily have that big star power.
I don't know. We'd have to go back and look at, national champions and stuff like that. But I mean, the NFL speaks for itself, man. The best offensive linemen are going in, the 5 stars are going in the first round. And, I'm just not impressed with Bowen at all thus far, Michael. The recruiting results have been no different than what Justin Fry was going to do. I understand that Maxwell Riley and Sam Greer were holding out for a while, but because they were only holding out because they knew Fry was leaving, they just wanted to see who the new coach was, and then they were going to commit. I know that there are rumors that, Maxwell Riley was going to go to Clemson, but again, those are rumors, and I don't believe anything from like a 17-year-old. Their mind changes a lot. Tyler Bowen just needs to be better, man. He needs to be getting the 5 stars from out of state. Felix Ojo, he's committing on July 4th. Like, I know, like, he was, he once said Ohio State was at the top, but now everybody just knows he's not going to Ohio State. It's supposedly between Ohio State or Texas. He's going to Texas. Some people would try and say he needs time, but this is Ohio State, Michael. You aren't supposed to get any time to ramp up, and you're supposed to hit the ground running, getting the best of the best. This is why I wanted Kyle Flood. he already had relationships with a lot of these top kids. Tyler Bowen probably never spoke to them, considering he was coaching at fucking Virginia Tech. Just remember, Greg Stradrawa was run out of town, and he had much better classes than Justin Fryer and Tyler Bowen. I am one of those people that also wanted Stradrawa run out of town, and rightfully so. And we hired somebody that was no better than him. And I also wanted Fry gone, but I also didn't want Tyler Bowen. So, I've made it clear the program needed a grand slam hire months ago on the offensive line, and they didn't get it. I made a list of targets, and none of these guys ended up being hired, and now we're paying for it. We are absolutely paying for it, Michael, because you just can't live off Ohio. Ohio is not a very good football state anymore. They are not going to produce the talent year in and out to save a coach. They're not.
No, I mean, not typically at most positions. They're a supplemental state, and we've had a lot of very good players in the secondary and even linebacker with Styles. We've had some really good players come out of the state, but no, as a rule, top to bottom, you're not going to be able to recruit your position at an Ohio State level just depending on Ohio kids, and certainly not defensive line. You can get closer with Ohio kids on the offensive line than you can on the defensive line for sure. And it's not even close. The defensive
we're not
line
in 2002 anymore.
Yeah.
So, Michael, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about why you think this is going on. I know I have my thoughts, but why don't I leave the floor to you and you talk about why you think this is happening?
Well, I think we've had just from my following the team, I think we've had an issue, paying on the offensive and defensive lines out of high school. Ryan Day has not wanted to do that. And because of that, we have, we have struggled to land some kids that we probably would have landed. Justin Scott being one. The other kid, the edge rusher from Chicago, Lightfoot or something like that, Marquise Lightfoot, I believe, that we lost out on. Probably not Stewart. I don't know that we lost out on him because of money. I think for some reason he just wanted to go to South Carolina, but maybe it was money because he renegotiated a big NIL deal with them after his freshman year. He was, going to recommit, I guess. And so the problem has kind of persisted, but we had that really good 2021 defensive line, and we had a couple of other guys that were, producing and helping that were a part of that, but that was the core of it. And so we were able to get away with it. On the offensive line, there was definitely some talent still left over from Stud. He actually recruited pretty good compared to Justin Fry. If you go back and compare their records, I mean, he lacked in some areas, but he recruited a much higher average star than Fry did. And of course, the 5-star, tackle was there, Fry's first year, first round pick. And so, we had some talent there, and then we supplemented that talent very well out of the portal. Whoever was making that decision, if it was Justin Fry, I'll have to give him credit for that because they did select good help out of the portal. They had a few busts, some lower level guys they gave a shot to. But with McLaughlin, with Seth and with Simmons, those were both really good lands, even though both of them were out by the end of the national championship run last year. And there have been a couple of the Ohio guys that have looked like they're going to come on. Montgomery has looked like he's going to come on and be a pretty good lineman, a pretty good player moving forward. But we still don't want to pay for those big offensive linemen out of high school. And so, the question is the way we've been doing it going to continue to work? Because the rules have changed again, Jay. And if you remember when NIL first hit in 2022, it caught Ryan Day by surprise. It caught everybody surprised, kind of, or maybe it's 2022, I believe. Texas A&M swooped in and used this idea of the NIL collective to steal an Ohio State player or so and a couple of Alabama players, and they catapult to the #1 class in the country. And we were slow to adapt to it. 2023 class was a lot like this one. It was rough. It was hard to, get those top level guys. It was a pretty good class, but it lacked some of that top level star power, like you're saying with this, with only 3 consensus top 100s. And you could basically say 5 top 100s because they're very close there. But still, that's not a great Ohio State class by any means. That's a very average to maybe even slightly below average Ohio State class. And we've had another rule change, that Michigan won the national championship. The Buckeyes got their NIL act together. The New York Times wrote a big thing about them spending $20 million and getting guys there and Caleb Downs and everything. And they went out and they did it and they paid. They got guys out of the portal, basically, is how they, spent that NIL, to build that team. And so Ryan Day is saying that, he is not going to really negotiate these contracts anymore. Where like with Jeremiah Smith, they're negotiating right until the last hour and they get a package that Jeremiah is happy with. And Jeremiah sends in that letter signed. He's coming to Ohio State, but that wasn't going to happen unless his demands were met, unless certain things that he wanted, because he had such good other options, such good other offers on the table. And so we came through with that. Now Ryan Day is, or Ross Bjork, we're not using the NIL collectives at Ohio State. So we did that big episode a few episodes ago about they were going to be paying players from the university money now. It was a rule change through Congress. You can go back and watch that episode if you don't know what we're talking about. But the NIL collectives, we're no longer using them. I don't know if they've ceased to function. Hasn't really been answered. But all we're offering them is the money that has been allocated for football, which is about $16 million. And it took $20 million to build our payroll last year. Ohio State is interpreting the rule that this is how teams have to do it. You can't put together additional deals with NIL packages. You just have to offer them out of the school's pot, and that's it. That's the only offer they get. Anything else they have to get once they get on campus. Ohio State's interpreting that's how it should be done, and that's the rule. Other schools are not interpreting that way, and other schools are continuing to involve their NIL collectives along with this new pot of $15, $16, $17 million, and they're making bigger offers, especially in some of these key positions on the offense and defensive line.
So did that go into effect today, July 1st?
Yes.
So if that goes into effect, like these teams, can you no longer offer NIL collective, or what you're saying is Ohio State's interpreting it that way, but other teams are also paying more money on, still using NIL funds as well.
Just like Ohio State interpreted the original NIL, that they couldn't really give anything to kids until they got on campus, and it cost us in recruiting. And then after enough teams were doing it, Ohio State finally said, okay, we've got to get their act together. They formed some collectives and became really strong in the NIL space, in the NIL market. Well, like I said a few episodes ago, the salary cap just increased because now you have the opportunity to pay, in Ohio State's case, $16 million to kids from the school's pockets, as well as these NIL collectives and what they can generate in endorsement revenues. Now, there is a new clearinghouse where endorsement deals have to be cleared. So I don't know all the legalities of that, but point being, I don't think you could do a bogus deal where you pay a kid $1 million and he really does nothing. This stuff has to be cleared through a clearinghouse now. So I'm not going to get into all that, kind of technical legal stuff, because some of those things are still developing anyway. But the bottom line is the salary cap went up, and Ohio State is acting like the salary cap went down. The problem is the market's not operating by those rules. And so there's other schools that have a lot more money to offer because they're still, they don't believe the way Ohio State has interpreted the rule is necessary.
I see. Okay. Yeah, it's no surprise Ohio State is behind on this. I thought Ross Bjork would fix a lot of that. He hasn't, but Yeah, at the end of the day, I know we can blame NIL for a lot of things, and it absolutely is a major factor. I'm not saying it's not a factor, but it's not everything. It's a crutch people use to feel good about the coaches on staff who have underwhelmed in recruiting a lot of times. For example, Michael, Lincoln Kienholz was going to get a lot of NIL money to go to Washington. But Ohio State was still able to prevail because they just recruited him well and sold development. He said that. He came out and said that Washington was paying him a lot more money. So again, these coaches are just not doing a very good job at selling the program. We just won a fucking national championship,
But
and you can't sell the fucking program?
Jay, you prove my point. Lincoln Kienholz is the kind of quarterback you get when you use that approach and that strategy. They learned pretty quickly that they had to put some money some certain places, and quarterback was always one of them that they were willing to invest in because Ryan Day loves quarterbacks. And so, with Julian Sayin and with Will Howard, they were definitely willing to spend some money. But with Lincoln Kienholz, it was more like, well, we're going to offer you this, because you're not as valuable to us as you are to Washington because we're not sure what you're going to be. And so when you take that approach of the lower money and the sell for development, those kind of things, you're going to get a lot of those players that are not in that top 100 tier or maybe even top 150.
That is a good point. But I mean, at the same time, Lincoln Kienholz was not a 3-star recruit. He was, I'm looking actually at his rating right now because I actually am kind of curious. I believe he was 194. So that's not bad. And considering he looked like the best quarterback in the U.S. Army All-American game a couple years ago, that's really not a bad rating. He was a 92.52 in the composite, top 200 player. Was he top 100? No. But, he was solidly ranked and getting a lot of money from Washington. So split the difference, I guess.
But comparatively, like compared against our typical quarterback recruiting, he would be considered kind of a lower rank. He would be the equivalent of an offensive line recruit of about an 89.
Yeah, man, I wish we could get offensive line recruits in the top 200 that turned down fucking, like extra money to go to Ohio State, man. That'd be fucking nice because this kid was out in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, he was a good player, but not, again, Ohio State has been getting those top 50 type quarterbacks. So it was a pretty long way from that. It wasn't their typical, quarterback get. And he ended up being not a guy that was going to, be able to play here, evidently. I wish him the best of luck somewhere else if he goes. Slip and Skippy just said, but he's going to transfer. Julian Sayin will be there for 2 or 3 years. Yeah, absolutely. That's the way it went for Kienholz. A lot of people knew. There was kind of like this great Burrow hope of people like saying he was the next Joe Burrow. People hoping for that redemption, that national championship that never was with Joe Burrow at the helm at Ohio State. But it wasn't meant to be. He just wasn't good enough, it doesn't seem.
I guess the question becomes, where is this going? Because again, Ohio State's had very, very underwhelming recruiting classes along the defensive and offensive line the past few cycles. Like our team has been the 2021 defensive line recruiting class. They have had Donovan Jackson as the lone 5-star anchor for the last couple years. And then, we had Paris Johnson before him. Instead of having like a Georgia or a Texas or an Alabama the last couple of years until last year, or Ohio State in the same boat, we're about to have like Penn State level lines. And, that's really concerning because that's exactly what we're recruiting to. Michael, have you noticed that Michigan is starting to actually recruit very well along the defensive line this class?
Yeah, I have. I have seen that Michigan is picking up their recruiting in general.
They are. And we will have an individual episode to talk about exactly what's going on in their case with the NCAA. For the record, Michael, I think it's safe to say you and I want them to come unscathed out of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do.
I do too. I want them to get away with it. If they were cheating, I don't give a fuck.
Jay,
they still won on the field.
We've got a Michigan fan here, and he's got some critique of the Buckeye Nation. I don't think Ohio State develops that good. Look what it took OSU to actually win a championship. It took their highly ranked players to the end of their career to get a championship, not to mention outside help. He goes on to say, not only that, Ohio State doesn't know how to team build, yet they get outside glamour piece, and they neglected the trenches and special teams. Well, they did go out and get a first round offensive tackle and I think a third round offensive guard. So they did invest in getting the trenches shored up on the offensive side. They didn't need the trenches shored up on the defensive side because they already had, 3 draftable players on there. And so we'll see how they do moving forward. I mean, I think that, the pieces that they added on this team, they did build it exactly how they needed to. I think they proved that by running the gauntlet and winning the national championship. But moving forward, there's always questions. There's always room for critique and room for improvement. And as it concerns the right now, there is certainly, heavy concern on that defensive line in the next few years, Jay.
Absolutely, man. I've been looking again, like I said, we don't have 2020. It's storming outside now. So if you hear a storm in the background, it's because it is storming. Yeah, man, we don't have that 2021 line. That 2021 recruiting class has been an identity for literally the 2022, 2023, and 2024 seasons, and now it's gone. And I'm not going to disagree with Antoine Johnson, man. I mean, that class was super highly ranked, and you need players to win, but it's really going to show like what our development is, because I will tell you this, Michael, a lot of people are trying to say, and one last point I want to make about all of this, they're trying to say that the portal is going to save Ohio State. Oh yeah, we missed on this person. We'll just hit the portal. Like, didn't you see our portal haul on the defensive line last year? Well, I just want to point out that Bo Atkinson and Logan George are solid pickups. They absolutely are solid pickups. But let's not mistake them for first-team All-Americans looking for a new home. We are getting a bit hyperbolic about their additions in the aftermath of so many Larry Johnson whiffs. Atkinson, for instance, you watch his film. Yeah, he passes the look test, no doubt. But half of his sacks last season, Michael, came against Florida State, which had an abomination of an offensive line. And then, Logan George, it's fucking Idaho. Who in the fuck does Idaho even fucking play? You're telling me this guy's going to come in and make a big difference right away at Ohio State, playing in like teams like, Youngstown State? I fucking doubt it. The hope here with these players is that they will improve massively with another year of maturity, because last season, both of them, that is not an Ohio. Neither one of them are Ohio State starter players last season. We hope that they're going to get better. And my last point to all the portal stuff, Ohio State badly needed a nose tackle going into the 2025 season, and we didn't get one. Ryan Day even said, we need defensive tackle help. He didn't get specific and say a nose tackle, but we needed one of those 330-pound black kids from the Southeast that are just powerful, run-stuffing defensive tackles, and they didn't get one. So you can't fully rely on the portal either. Ohio State's not hitting home runs there either. The coaches need to do a better job at recruiting, Michael, and it starts at the high school ranks, because there are going to be kids that are Ohio State caliber at each position every year in high school. You don't know that you're going to get that every year in the portal.
Yeah, that's true. You know, and I don't disagree, but at the end of the day, Jay, as we're wrapping this up, I'm just going to say that you know, there's a little, you know, things are a little shaky on the recruiting ground. But you know, we were here in 2023, and Ohio State eventually got it figured out. Of course, it took
Well,
Michigan away.
you keep saying 2023. It's not the same anymore. We had 2021 class to fall back on then. We don't have those players here anymore. Where are the multiple 5-stars to like, you know, be like, okay, these guys are coming back. These guys are coming back. It's not the same anymore. We don't have those guys to fall back on anymore.
I know, but what I'm saying is, you know, we were there where recruiting was tough, and you know, they got it figured out, and I think they're going to get this figured out too. I think Ryan Day has a strategy. I do think Ryan Day is operating. You know, you have to take the handcuffs off. You know, if indeed they're misinterpreting this NIL rule, you have to take the handcuffs off. You cannot fight with one hand behind your back. That doesn't work. But I do think Ryan Day does have a little bit of an NFL mentality with this. You know, a little bit of a almost Bill Belichick. We all know his infatuation with the New England Patriots. And I think that he wants to pay more for proven commodities. And while he has missed out of the portal, so far his success has been pretty good. Several guys, you know, have been drafted out of the portal, guys that he's brought over from the portal. Another one, you know, Caleb Downs will get drafted after this year in a very high round, likely the first round. And so I do think that is still part of his strategy. And, you know, until proven otherwise, you know, I will say, Jay, that I trust in national championship winning coach Ryan Day.
Of course you do. Of course you do. I don't know, man. You know, Antoine Johnson makes some really good points here. In the back of my mind, it's like, yeah, you know, Ryan Day got it done. We had an expensive roster. Of course we did. We had a lot of 4th and 5th year guys. We nailed the transfer portal last year at certain spots. So, you know, I mean, you just got to hope that Ryan Day's play calling is there. I know he's talking a little bit about the 3-4 defense. You know, Ohio State doesn't have the personnel to run a 3-4, Michael. You need to have multiple like 330, 340-pound nose tackles to effectively run it. I think you need 2 of them at the bare minimum just for depth purposes. We have one guy. Caden McDonald, beast, monster, loved him, underrated coming out of high school. You can't only have one guy because the most important position on defense, if you're running a 3-4, is the nose tackle. Mm-hmm. And if you only have one, that's not good enough. It's just not. It's not good enough.
I agree. They got to pick it up. But Jay,
it starts on the lines, man. Ryan Day has just not recruited the lines well since he's been here. He has not. Outside of one class, he has not recruited the lines well. And that includes 2020 and 2019. And it's not good enough, man. It's not good enough. I guess, you know, if you want to point to NIL and stuff, what the fuck happened in 2018, 2019 and 2020? Yeah, I know we got Paris Johnson in 2020, but he is an Ohio kid. You know, 2019 and 2020 offensive line classes, man, weren't great. Or, you know, line classes on both sides of the ball. I know we got Luke Whippler in 2020, so maybe the offensive line was fine, but the defensive line surely wasn't. So, you know, NIL didn't exist back then.
Well, Jay, Day has built his teams on extremely high skilled position players. And you know, he does get some good on the defensive and offensive lines, but he likes to supplement in those areas. And he really likes those guys who can be out wide. And, you know, his formula worked. And I think he's going to figure it out. And I think it's going to work again. I'm not saying he's not going to lose a game here or there. Not saying he's going to go 6 for his next 6 against Michigan. But I think he's going to figure it out. And I do think Ryan Day is going to be multi-national championship winning coach, Ryan Day.
When do you think the next one's coming?
Within the next 4 years.
I think we need to get it done this year, man. I don't see
Well,
us winning in 2-3 years. Not with the Lions. Not
Anytime
right now.
within the next 4 years, I believe he's going to win one.
Okay. I mean, I'll add to my little memorabilia down in my basement. I'm all for it. I mean, yeah. Michael, the chat has exploded, man. I feel like we have some really, really good comments in here, but we need to get the fuck out of here, man.
We do. Antoine, I appreciate your participation tonight.
Sage, Slip and Skippy, some new names in here tonight, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So good off-season content, a lot to talk about with the recruiting, NIL, and all of that. We will be back next week, probably on a regular time on Monday. So be looking for that.
Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Yep, and happy 4th of July. Hope you guys have a great and wonderful weekend.
Man, dude, our super chat is down. Our super chat is down. I was noticing that. I think I need to fix that. Yeah, I think some people wanted to super. Yeah, it's down. I'll have to fix it. What the fuck was I? I feel like I was going to say one last thing. Follow us on X, and yeah, like, subscribe, comment, share with all your friends, man. This show is going someplace. And wow, happy birthday to Bad Gateway. Happy birthday, sir. 78 years young. Wow, look at that.
And appreciate that intention to give us a super chat. We certainly appreciate that.
I'll fix it. If you still want to give it afterwards, I'll fix it. It'll be fixed within like a day.
But thank you guys for watching. We appreciate you being a part of it, and we'll see you next week.